What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of Fear Frequency. We have another extremely packed show, and I'm your host, Jimmy Champagne, and with me today is my co-host, George Frizard.
Hey, guys.
How's it going, dude?
Good. What's up?
Not a lot. So I listened back to episode 2, and gotta say, I really couldn't even tell that we weren't in the same state.
No, you did a good job of chopping it up to make it sound like a real conversation between two people sitting at the same table.
Yeah, we got some good comments on it. I got a few DMs from fans and friends that are all positive, so that's nice.
We have 3 5-star reviews on iTunes now, which is great.
We have 3. Do you have them up? Do you want to read them? I didn't know that. I thought we had 1.
Yeah, let me just pull it up in my podcast addict
Okay,
app.
so while you're doing that, I'll do this housekeeping stuff that I had planned. So basically, guys, we finally are on YouTube. Episodes 1 and 2 are on YouTube. They're on my channel, youtube.com/JimmyChampagne. And I guess people like watching it there because it's doing really well. So if you want to listen to the show on YouTube, you can go there. And also, we released those episodes at a weird time. Just like whenever they were ready to go up, we put them up. From now on, starting with this episode that you're listening to right now, they will be up on Tuesday at the same time as everything else. There's no video portion or anything. I really don't do anything other than just put an image there. But I put in the description like time codes that you can click. So if you just want to hear one segment, that's the best way to do it. So that's the housekeeping on that. Do you have our reviews pulled up?
Yeah, I got them right here.
Cool.
So the first one is from Dude, It's Jeremy. 5 stars.
Okay.
He says, the title is Great Show. Anyone can enjoy. And the review is, I love their love for horror. These guys know their stuff, and it's great to hear them chat about the past, present, and future of horror. Awesome job. Can't wait for more.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. That's a really nice review.
Yeah, that was very nice. Second one is from Luke Jaggers. He says, just wonderful. I've been wanting a new horror podcast that covers movies I've actually seen or movies that are coming out soon. There are tons of horror podcasts that talk about old movies that I have no access to watch, so I love that this podcast covers mostly new stuff. Great hosts and great topics. Def a must-listen for horror fans.
Wow, that is in-depth and very nice. Thank you,
Yes.
Luke. You are
Thank
the
you,
man.
Luke. And
And
third
then
and
you can
final.
read the other one, even though we tweeted it already.
Yeah, but
It's still positive.
give Papa Drew another shout out. So Papa Drew Bear says, a rad new podcast. I'm not the big horror guy, but I really love hearing these guys talk about the genre.
Those are good reviews, though. That's
Yeah.
our constant push to actually review us on iTunes is working, it seems. So that's good. Okay, so let's move on to segment 1 of the show, which is news. We have a ton of stuff, and a lot of it has to do with John Carpenter.
Yeah, it's cool to see him, coming out and saying some nice things about the new Halloween movie.
Yeah, so he is doing a round of interviews right now because he's going on tour for his new album. But of course, everyone's just asking him about the Halloween movie that comes out next year, which he is the executive producer of. And he's giving a lot of answers, which is good. He's revealing a lot of stuff. So I don't know how Blumhouse feels about that. But the first interview I picked out segments or like little snippets. So with The Guardian, he was asked if he missed his low-budget days of Dark Star and Halloween. And he says, no, I don't miss working. Working is hard because you have to get up in the morning. I did a music video for the single from our new album, Christine. I had to work all night, and by God, I forgot how rough that is. Stay up all night? Wow. And then the second one was he's spoken about how contemporary filmmakers give up creative control in the final cut too easily. And the guy asked if he wanted to be starting out now rather than when he did. And he said, it was such a different time back then, and the kind of movies were different. I started when you could actually make an exploitation film, a low-budget exploitation movie, and get it into theaters. Nowadays, it's ridiculously expensive. Could I succeed if I started today? Probably not. I'd be rejected. Which is actually probably true. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think you could make a lot of the stuff he did. Like, it's all very nuanced and like low.
Yeah, it's weird that, he makes these like Halloween being like one of the most, popular and successful independent movies ever made. It's weird that he was able to get so much control over that movie. And I feel like that's not really something that a new filmmaker could do.
Yeah, I know that's Blumhouse's thing is they give filmmakers like $5 million and then a lot of creative control, but still that's a lot different than what John Carpenter was doing back in the day. But it seems like the most modern way that can happen. You know, like, got to make some concessions, but right now I feel like Blumhouse is the company that's bringing it, like putting these low budget movies in theaters.
Yeah, and they really crank them out. They really are willing to let, you know, new directors who just have a good idea just create a movie, and it, for the most part, they turn out pretty good.
Yeah, and like when they started out, I'd say there was more like mediocre or bad films than good, but now it's like rare that we get a bad movie from Blumhouse, which is kind of crazy. So the next news story we have is also from about John Carpenter. So in another interview, he was asked about the new movie and whether or not he was involved in getting Jamie Lee Curtis on board, because famously she was not too pleased about how H20 went and was kind of done with the franchise after that. Mm-hmm. And he responded that no, he did not have any involvement. And then he went on to talk about the actual movie, and he said it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it, it's almost an alternate reality. And he says it picks up after the first one and it pretends that none of the others were made. It's going to be fun. There's a really talented director and it was well written. He's impressed. So the big thing there is that when they announced this movie from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, they said that Halloween 1 and 2 were canon, but this statement makes it seem like Halloween 2 is also gone now.
Yeah, and I kind of understand why they would cut 2 and just have the first one, because, I mean, even though 2 is a great sequel, I think that it introduces some things that that kind of lead to the series getting bad later. Like, I don't know if they're going to continue with the whole, like, Jamie Lee Curtis is related to Michael Myers arc, and that's introduced in the second movie, and I'm thinking maybe they wanted to cut that out, and that's why they excluded the second movie.
That's like literally the only thing I could think of as to why they would cut it, which is good. Like, 'cause I think that's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Like, he kills his sister at the beginning, so.
Right. It's weird to try to add that, you know, bloodline thing to the movies, and that really muddies the whole plot in the later movies completely with, like, the Thorn trilogy and all that. And I think to just kind of ignore all that and to cut all that out and just kind of keep him this mysterious figure that is just bent on killing is probably a better way to take the new movie.
Yeah, because I recently rewatched Hush, and I think that's a big reason of why that movie works, because the killer in that also just has no motivation. I thought that was pretty cool. And then also, like, you knew 4 and 5 weren't going to be canon. You knew 6 wasn't, because everyone hates that one. H20, some people like it. I actually know a lot of people like it, but that one probably you could think like maybe would be canon, but at the end of the day, it's like that could have been like the Clone Wars. You know how when they cut everything in the Star Wars universe, like, but kept Clone Wars because it kind of worked? That could have been H20, but I'm kind of glad that one's gone.
Right, especially with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back too. It's like, you know, maybe you could do like one H20 and then this new one, but
right. And then H20, so H20, reason people besides this know it's like for sure gone is because she has a daughter played by Judy Greer in this movie, in this new one that's coming out. So that kind of gets rid of the whole thing where, you know, she had a son.
Yeah.
And then like Resurrection, no one wants that in there.
No, just keep Tyra Banks and Busta Rhymes out of that.
So, yeah, but like, so Judy Greer is playing her daughter. So when that, you know, that picture came out with Jamie Lee Curtis in the original outfit on the porch in Haddonfield, and I was like, are they gonna like de-age her and make this Halloween 2? Because they could have done that, you know, pretty easily. She's kept her figure, like she looks exactly the same except for the Activia haircut. Right. But like that would have been bad and stupid. And then they said that like Judy Greer is playing her daughter, so I was like, there's no way, because that like Judy Greer isn't young, you know. Yeah,
and I think that's definitely a better way to take it than to de-age her and try to make it a continuation of that same night.
Yeah, like we all saw Rogue One, you know, they did that stuff, and like that's a Star Wars movie. And granted, it had a lower budget than you know, like The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, but still, it's a Disney-backed movie, and that still did not look great. Right. So I like what they're doing with this. And then I guess we have one more Carpenter story, and that's that he is scoring Halloween 2018.
Yeah, we all know that he still has the musical chops with his latest album that he released and his recent Christine music video.
Dude, that was really good.
That was really cool.
I really like that. And yeah, like, so the first 2 albums were reworkings of like, it was called Lost Themes 1 and 2. It was like reworkings of like old music that he had and some original stuff. Well, all original stuff, some new stuff. And then this new one is kind of modern reworkings of movie themes. And so he did a Christine music video, which was a Stephen King adaptation, and that was really good. So, I mean, like, the more involved he gets in this new Halloween movie, the better I think it's going to be.
Right. I think that the score is really something that a lot of the sequels really missed out on. And I mean, the original Halloween, theme song is so iconic that if he can create something even half as good as that, I think this new movie's going to have a pretty kick-ass soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't see how he can mess it up. But speaking of Halloween, so 9 Inch Nails, which is Trent Reznor and I think Atticus Ross is his name, they released like a remix, a 6.5-minute remix of the Halloween theme, and it's really good, but like the first 4 minutes of it it's all stuff you've heard before, like it's not that much different. But then around the 6-minute mark, I would say the beat kicks in and it's pretty dope.
Yeah, I really like it. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about anyone kind of touching the Halloween theme, but I think that it actually does a good job and it sounds really cool and unique.
Yeah, so you can find that on YouTube. It's on Spotify too. That's like everywhere. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And then with that, we're done with our Halloween news.
As sad as that is.
Yeah, right. It's not like we had a ton or anything. So you want to handle the next one?
Sure. So, as we all know, Happy Death Day just came out on Friday, and it has been making a ton of money. It made $26.5 million on its opening weekend.
And that's a lot of money.
That's a lot
for
of money.
A movie that is like pretty low budget. I would guess $5 million because it's Blumhouse.
Right.
And so this is definitely a movie I would have seen in like high school or even college. And I'm actually going to see it after we're done recording. But I thought it was cool that 63% of the people who bought tickets were under 25. So like they're hitting that that core demographic of high school and college age kids. But it's a good movie, which is different than what we got when we were kids.
Right. They would bring us into the movie, and then it would just be really shitty, but we would buy it, and then they would keep making sequels because they made so much money the first time.
Yeah, so, like, kids are pretty lucky that they got this dope movie to latch on to. It looks pretty cool. I've heard that it's basically a thriller comedy rather than a straight-up slasher.
Yeah, I've heard pretty similar things, but I do want to see it. I think that the premise seems kind of interesting, and I'm curious to see what you think about it after you see it.
Yeah, I'm going to go check that out tonight. So we'll probably talk about it next week if we both get a chance to see it. But it's good. It's good that something that's classified as horror in the like press is making that much money, because it's just showing that like everything else is not making money this year, but horror movies are. So that's good.
Right. It's good for the genre to get a good shot in the arm with all this money coming in.
Right. And then so as we all know, Friday was Friday the 13th in October, which is like crazy spooky, but a bunch of people got nostalgic, and the guys who were gonna make the sequel to the really good and really underrated 2009 Friday the 13th, they released the like first page of the script that showed the title on Twitter, and it's called Friday the 13th Camp Blood: The Death of Jason Voorhees. And I mean, I really like 2009, but this one was going to be found footage, I heard, which is stupid. And to be like, you just bring him back with a really good movie and you're just going to kill him off? Like, that seems kind of stupid to me.
I mean, my only consolation for why the title might not be indicative of how the movie is one of the other best Jason movies is Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, which is part 4. Mm-hmm. And that was supposed to be the final death of the character, and that's actually really good. So I don't know if they're just trying to invoke the same themes as the 4th, which I think is most people's favorite one, and kind of name it something like this, or if they're actually going to try to come back and then just end it completely.
Yeah. So we all know this never happened, which kind of sucks. Like, the Friday the 13th franchise is in limbo right now. They were going to do a CW show that introduced like Jason's dad and stuff, and the pilot was apparently so bad that it got canceled before it even started. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But Yeah, I mean, they're gonna come back after it. Like it's gonna do well, and then Warner Brothers is gonna bring back Nightmare on Elm Street, and that'll probably do decent. And then like Paramount's not gonna leave money on the table, so we'll get another Friday the 13th, and we'll have like another reboot, remake, resurgence like we had in 2009 era.
Yeah, except hopefully this round is better than the last, because really the only memorable horror remakes from that time are the Friday the 13th and Evil Dead.
Yep, pretty much. Evil Dead is like in a different league than those other ones.
Yeah, the Evil Dead remake
good.
was actually really cool and interesting and went a different path than the original and tried to be its own movie, which I guess no one really appreciated because I don't think it made that much money, but I really do like that movie.
It made enough to like maybe get a sequel, but then the reboots every other reboot got such bad reviews that they kind of just left it. They're just like, nah, we're good.
Yeah.
And now we have Ash vs. Evil Dead. So
yeah.
I forgot to put this story in the doc, but I know it, so I'll just go into that. Speaking of Ash vs. Evil Dead, so that show, we talked about this last week, remember, where the like rumor was that it was going to be the final season, probably because ratings weren't that high. Mm-hmm. But if it does well, then it won't be the final season. And I guess besides Game of Thrones, Ash vs. Evil Dead is the most pirated show, which is a big part of it.
I mean, it's not good because the show doesn't make any money off of that, obviously. But, right. I mean, a lot of people are watching it, so maybe that has some sway on what happens. I think that maybe they'll just focus on making more things around the show that you can't torrent, like merchandise or something like that, where people have to actually spend money to get physical things instead of being able to just download the show.
Right. And then so the big thing I see online is that a lot of people were like begging for this show to happen as a movie or a show or whatever, but then they're the ones turning around and torrenting it. So if you're listening to the show and you're torrenting the show, or if you're listening to our show and you're torrenting Ash vs. Evil Dead, like, again, like we said with Cult of Chucky, stop fucking doing that, because we're not going to get any more of the show. Like, you're actively killing it.
Right, and it's really, the seasons aren't that expensive. I bought season 1 pretty much right around the time it came out at Target. I think it was $20 for the first season, which is like, at least, I think it's about 10 episodes, so you're paying like $2 an episode, really.
Yeah, I got season 1 on Blu-ray for $10 at Best Buy, like a couple months after it was out. And then season 2 I got on Blu-ray for I think like $20 also. They're cheap. Like for a season of TV, that's cheap.
Yeah, normally a season of TV runs you like $40-$50. These are cheap and they're really good. And if you don't want to subscribe to Stars, I think is the network.
Yeah, Stars.
This is on. If you don't want to subscribe to Stars, just go out and buy the Blu-rays. They're great. They have a bunch of extra features and they look great, and it's a great way to support the show, even if you don't want to subscribe to Stars.
Yeah, and if you want to catch up and you haven't done this already, you can get a 7-day trial of Stars through Amazon Prime. And if you like let it lapse, it'll be $5 a month. But then if you want to binge the first 2 seasons, like get that trial, binge the first 2 seasons, and then if you like it, cancel your subscription and then re-up it when the show comes back in February. Then you can watch it every week on Amazon Prime whenever you want. And $5 a month is not that much money for all the stuff you get from that channel.
No, I think that's a great deal and probably the best way for a lot of people to watch it.
Yeah, so we won't wax poetic on pirating anymore. But yeah, Ash vs. Evil Dead, we've got to save the show. So then the next thing we got on here is that the final Stranger Things 2 trailer dropped. And you just watched it today, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about this season. I think it looks like it'll be not as good as the first season.
Dude, there's a fucking lot of CGI in that trailer. That does not look good.
Yeah. It seems like the real strong point of the first season was having all the dynamic of like all the kids hanging out and getting to know each other and living the nostalgia of the time and the real world of like, you know, the adults interacting and the kids interacting in this kind of cool world. And this seems like it's going more into the darker half, which is all CGI. And you'd assume that this show would have a huge budget and would be able to look decent, but if the trailer's any indicator, it does not look like it's really getting the attention it needs.
Yeah, and so they edited this trailer like a movie trailer, which I thought was kind of weird. And I was like, oh, they're showing so much. Like, why are they showing so much? And then I
Right.
realized, like, it's a TV show. So they're probably not showing anything.
Right.
But still, like, that giant spider monster does not look good at all. And, like, the more time they spend in the Upside Down, I think the worse off the show is going to be overall. Because, like, that was the weakest part of season 1 also, is just how crappy that looked. I mean, in my opinion. But the one thing I did like is that my boy Steve is back with his bat.
I mean, Steve is a great character. I'm a huge fan of Steve, and I just want to see him on screen in this season as much as possible.
I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of screen time in the trailer, so hopefully they're not just showing every one of his scenes. And then also they had the new character, Max, who's like this redhead chick who hangs out with them. So that's cool that they're adding in another character to the Hawkins AV club.
Yeah, I feel like they really just wanted to capitalize on it coming out and having a redheaded girl in the group to hang out with them.
Yeah, so Stranger Things 2 is out in 2 weeks on October 27th.
Yep.
So we will check it out then, obviously, which I'm sure everyone listening will.
Yeah, I mean, I am excited for it. I don't want to really just think, have people think that I have like a disdain for the show. I really like the first season, and I'm just kind of weary about how good the second one's going to be.
Yeah, well, that first trailer for it was fucking dope. Like, the one with Thriller was amazing. So I feel like I was really expecting the same thing, like something really good. And I understand why they can't top that. So I'm pretty hopeful that this, or positive that this is going to be good. Like, so, I mean, yeah, it has a much more bigger budget than the first season, definitely. And, the first season is just very good. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to be good.
Yeah, and I think with so many people looking forward to it and wanting to watch it, they probably put a lot of time and effort into making sure that it's polished as much as possible.
Yeah. So that wraps up segment 1. So we're going to take a break real quick, and we're going to come right back with segment 2. We have 2.5 movies to talk about this time. Okay, so we're back from our break. We're ready for segment 2. This is our review segment. So the first movie we're talking about today is Found Footage 3D, which has been making the festival rounds like pretty much everything we talk about. But what makes this unique is that it just released on Shudder. And yes, this movie is actually in 3D. If you have the red and blue glasses, it comes out a little later. But we both watched it in 2D.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Shudder. And if you don't know, Shudder is like Netflix for horror movies. And they have like majority decent stuff, I would say. Like, it's more good than bad. There's not really a lot of trash on there, and it's $5 a month, so I think we both pay for it.
Yeah, I think the best feature of it is their TV mode, where you can select a genre of horror movies and it'll just play a loop of horror movies.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really cool and really great to just throw on in the background if you're doing something else.
Yeah, I do that a lot, actually, because the one thing I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago, but the one thing I miss about having cable is I used to just put the TV on while I was doing shit. And like having Netflix doesn't really do the same thing. So now I throw on Shudder TV whenever. And I don't even think you need to subscribe to Shudder to use Shudder TV.
It is worth the $5 a month, though. You'll get your money's worth by paying for it.
Yeah, so yeah, it is worth the $5 a month. But unfortunately, I don't think either of us really liked Found Footage 3D. We both had our hopes up for this.
Yeah, after seeing the trailer, I was really excited for it, but it did not deliver on what the trailer was showing.
Yeah, so quick explanation of what this movie is. It's a found footage movie that's kind of making fun of found footage movies, and their big twist that makes it different than everything else is that it's the first one in 3D. And they even make a joke about why would anyone shoot anything in 3D, like any documentary whatsoever. Right. So that was funny. It is a comedy. It's meant to be a comedy. And it has a very small cast of characters, which is good. They like go out into this cabin in Texas to film this found footage movie, and wouldn't you know it, actually like hauntings start happening to them and things get crazy.
Yeah, I think that all the comedy aspects of the movie work better than any of the horror aspects at all. I think that when it is making fun of the genre of found footage, a lot of those jokes hit and are funny because they're super meta because they're currently doing whatever they're joking about in the movie.
Yeah.
And those kind of come off. Like, I was laughing out loud at some of the jokes that they made about found footage.
Yeah.
But
like the beginning is so good when they're setting up everything and like talking and not like doing horror stuff and just like standing around.
Right.
It's great.
Well, they just have the director be like, just being like a huge asshole. And it's like, well, why would anyone film in 3D? I don't know. He's a 3D enthusiast and he's a documentarian. So he brings one on his vacation.
Yeah. And then they do these like confessional things where they're all talking about the director and they're like, yeah, he doesn't have an ending. And then so like basically the guy Derek is the producer, writer, and star. Amy is his actual wife in the movie, and she's the co-star. And the plot of the movie they're making is like this couple goes out in the woods to this cabin and it turns out it's haunted. And then they come out of it stronger than ever to save their failing marriage. And that's exactly what's happening in their real life.
Right. So it's super meta in the fact that the plot of the movie that they're making and the plot of the actual movie itself are basically the same.
Yeah, and so like the guy Derek is just the producer and the star or whatever, but he's the one paying for it. So the guy Andrew, who's the actual director of the movie, doesn't do shit, and he keeps just getting like progressively more pissed off throughout the movie. He is pretty good. There's a really funny part in the very early in the movie where Derek compares his movie to Apocalypse Now, and then his wife just starts laughing, and she's like, "Really? You're comparing yourself to Coppola?" And then he's like, "Yeah." So that was pretty funny.
The Andrew character was really kind of a stand-in for like the general found footage fan, where he's basically walking around and whenever they don't follow a rule or do something that's like clearly stupid in the genre, he just comes out and he's just so pissed about it. He's like, "Why are we doing it this way? This is not how it works." Yeah, I don't want to spoil any of the plot points that are really become some of the better jokes in the movie. Like near the end when the Derek is writing the ending and he does some last minute rewrites that just absolutely would ruin the continuity of the movie completely. And he's like, "Yeah, whatever, just do whatever you want. I don't care anymore."
They're like, "We just want to leave."
Yeah,
it's pretty funny. And one part so like the way they reference other horror movies isn't smart. It's like, in found footage movies or a lot of horror movies, when they reference horror movies, they think they're being smart, but then they're really not, and you roll your eyes.
Right.
They make like an Evil Dead reference where he's like, "This is my boomstick." Evil Dead. And it's like, oh yeah, totally. You laugh at it because it's like, they're just being jerks, and it's funny.
Right.
And they try and riff on Cabin Fever. They meet these two old guys, and they're like, "Hey, okay, so you guys, we're gonna ask you for directions on where to go to get to this farm, and then you're gonna tell us, don't go there, it's scary." So then the guys fuck it up, and they're like, "Whatever, this is good." Oh, I almost died. And then they walk away, and then the old man's like, "Oh, you're going to this farm?" And they're like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Don't go there."
Right. Like immediately turns around and does the thing they were just trying to get them to do.
Yeah, so like this is all the first half of the movie, and it's great, but then when they get to the house and the scary stuff actually starts happening, it kind of falls apart because it becomes exactly what they're making fun of.
Right. In the movie, they're making a bad movie, and then the movie becomes the bad movie that they're making, and all the humor of it kind of falls away, and it just becomes a bad found footage movie.
Yeah, definitely. And so I paused it because I was doing laundry, and I ran downstairs, and there was 45 minutes left, and I came back up. The last 45 minutes are where exactly that moment when it falls apart. But I thought it was really weird. So Scott Weinberg, who's like a film critic, he used to write for FearNet, and he's on Twitter a lot. You probably knows who he is. He has an alien logo as his Twitter avatar. He's in the movie, and they make a big deal about it, but they don't really use him all that much, and I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was strange that they bring him in as kind of a way to boost the popularity of the movie, kind of get some buzz going around it, and then he's really in the movie for like maybe 2-3 minutes. I mean, he's barely in it at all.
Right, and also when they actually start trying to make this movie of a plot, it gets really talky, but the sound mixing is terrible. Like there'll be a ghost on screen or whatever, the like entity that is haunting the cabin they're in, it'll be loud as fuck, like blowing out your speakers, and then people are talking and they're just like whispering like this. But you can tell they're scared and they're supposed to be yelling, but then the volume drops. Did you experience this?
Yeah, I had the same thing. It's really weird, especially because they have a dedicated character in this movie that is the sound guy. So you'd think that they would have like the sound nailed for a movie like this. So it's weird that they messed that up so bad.
Yeah, and the compression, I don't know if it was shutter or what they were shooting on, but it looks very compressed. It looks like about 720p, I would say.
I don't know if it's the cameras that they're using or what, but in low light, they really don't look great. In daylight, everything looks really professional, but in some of the low light parts, it gets like really kind of blocky.
Yeah, so I know I've been looking forward to this for so long that I'm like, I think more disappointed than I should be at how it turned out because it's getting a lot of positive buzz. Like, like Bloody Disgusting wrote about it, and they don't really write about indie or festival stuff. Like, they'll review the movies, but they don't really focus too heavily on them. And they've shared exclusive clips. They've reviewed this. Like, they've been pushing this hard, and so I was excited. And I just don't think it turned out good. Like, it turned out okay. Like, a very solid, okay take on the found footage genre, but I don't know why they turned it into the movie they're making fun of.
Yeah, I think if they would have made it a comedy throughout and they would have kept that tone through the whole thing, I mean, I don't know how you do that when you're mixing it with an actual entity. I think that would be kind of a tough juggling act, and that's probably why they just said, well, actually, we're just going to make it like the place is really haunted, so we can just kind of switch to that and end the movie, because I don't really know how you juggle those two things. Mm-hmm. But I think definitely the comedy is better than the horror aspect.
Oh, yeah. I didn't get scared a single time in this movie whatsoever.
I never had any kind of jump. They do, I think, like one or two jump scares, and they're really kind of poorly timed and not good.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it pulls a lot from Hell House LLC, which we're going to bring this movie up every week because we love it. But some of the stuff in this movie, I don't know if like the release timing or whatever works out, but some of the stuff in this movie is eerily similar to Hell House, but it's done not as well. So I feel like that put the movie at a disadvantage from the start.
Yeah, I think that they kind of borrow heavily from the genre, but they don't execute well. Basically, they say, we saw this in another movie, so we should be able to do the same thing, but then it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, if you have like a group of friends who hate found footage, this one might be a fun one to watch because it is funny, and the jokes will hit with people who don't like found footage. Like, they'll land really well because they did for us, and we like found footage and we laugh. So I'm assuming that if you hate found footage, you will like laugh your ass off at this movie.
Right.
But if you're looking for like a movie that ends up actually being scary, like the trailer presents it, don't watch it because you'll probably be pissed, I would say.
Yeah, and don't go into it expecting like a legit found footage movie. It is shot in found footage, but it's really not a horror movie for the most part.
Yeah, so that's I guess that's how we feel about found footage 3D. It sucks that, again, we are so excited for something.
I know.
And then it turns out not good. It keeps happening.
We just can't get our hopes up for anything.
We're cursed. But the next movie we're talking about, I loved. It's my favorite movie of the entire year. And I'm not saying the best movie of the entire year. It's just my favorite. So, and I know you liked it. So we're talking about Mayhem next.
Yeah.
And you liked it, right?
Yeah, I really liked Mayhem. I thought that the style of it worked really well. It's very stylized, and the movie's plot plays out like a video game. It's probably the best video game movie I've ever seen.
Totally. And so if you don't know, Mayhem is directed by Joe Lynch, who directed Wrong Turn 2, and he's directed a lot of movies, and he's just gotten fucked over a bunch of times with stuff getting over edited and just not working out for him. And like he'll make a movie and then he'll have a day job for 5 years to pay for his next movie. But this movie is his, like, if this is not his coming out, breaking out movie, I don't know what will be, because it stars Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead. He played Glenn, and he's great. It stars Samara Weaving, and she's awesome. And it's definitely stylized. It has a great soundtrack. It's edited super well. everything about this, I didn't dislike a single aspect of this movie. So if you haven't heard of it, just to give you a basic plot, it's a lot like the Belko experiment, which came out earlier this year. And if you haven't heard of that, basically a bunch of people get trapped in an office building, and then the government is like, yo, you have to kill each other or we'll kill more of you. And then the goal is to have everyone dead by the end of it. And that one I don't think really worked because like there's no justification for their killing other than people are telling them to. But this movie, there's a virus going around the US and it makes your moral judgment turn off for 8 hours. And it gets released in this office building where Stephen Yeun's character Derek Cho works, and they all have to be in there for 8 hours while the vaccine is circulated through the air vents. And I think that works a lot better.
Yeah, it really gives you a reason. It makes you understand why the characters are acting the way they are, where it sets up the plot where it's like a convenient enough plot point that works well enough to where you don't have to worry about, well, why would these normal people just be murdering each other? And it just works for the movie and completely nails it.
Yeah, and it does another thing really well where it gives you a lot of backstory, but it makes sense, and it does it in like 10 minutes because Stephen Yeun narrates this movie in first person. So he's telling you what's happening as it's happening. So they're able to get into the action quick while also setting up the characters to be likable and like characters you care about, like especially Stephen Yeun's character Derek and Samara Weaving's character Melanie. It's so good how they set that up because you don't care about these characters in this law firm because Samara Weaving's character, she's like going in to meet with them because she wants to get her foreclosure reversed and it doesn't work out. So as she's leaving, that's when the government locks down the building. So she's stuck in there. And of course, Derek is the one who turns her down, but then they end up teaming up to like fight the boss of the company because Derek gets fired wrongfully. He's like a fall guy, and the setup just works.
Yeah, I think that the plot is one of the strongest elements of the movie. It really propels you through it in a way where it's like a tiered boss system, like a video game, where it's like we need to go to this to get the key card, to go up to this guy, to go up to this guy, to finally get up to the final boss of the game, of the movie. And
he's the literal boss.
Yeah, and he's the literal boss. Like, it's just a video game put into the format of a movie. It's hyper stylized, hyper violent, and it's a really, really fun watch.
Yeah, the fight choreography is amazing. Like the shot work and everything is just so good, and the weapon system is really good. Like the way they use different items around the office as weapons is great, and there's a lot of humor in it. Like you don't feel, that's the difference between this and the Belko experiment. Really, the Belko experiment, you kind of feel bad every time you laugh at something because the people are being forced to kill each other, which is stupid. But in this movie, like they have no choice, like if they don't like someone in their office, which like we all hate someone at work, they're gonna fucking beat their ass,
Yeah, right.
And you can laugh at it.
Yeah, and that definitely really works for the movie, and it really is just really interesting. Everyone who's in it, all the actors are top notch. There's never really one character that's super unbelievable in any way, and everything just kind of works together.
The chemistry between Melanie or Samara Weaving and Stephen Yeun is just flawless. Like they play really well together, and they're a great pair in the movie, which is good since they are in the movie about 97% of the entire runtime. Right. The editing is also super on point, and the soundtrack is by this guy named Steve Moore, who's like a really good synth artist, and it totally works.
Yeah, it really helps propel the plot scene to scene to have this like beat, pumping beat music while these fights are going on, and you're miking your way through the different floors of the building, and it all looks great. The sets are incredible. You believe it as a real office building, and the inventive ways they find different weapons and the way that they kill each other, and just like the pure chaos of the environment. Like you're following the two characters, but there's so much shit going on around them that's just pure insanity that it really puts you in the moment of the movie.
Yeah, and a lot of it's hilarious. So like they'll be talking on screen, you'll be paying attention, but then something will be going on in the background, and you'd be like, "Wait, what? Like what the fuck is going on back there?" Right. Like, oh my god, it's so funny. And so we're trying to get Joe Lynch on the show, so I saw a Q&A after I saw the movie where he talked about this, so I'm only going to spoil one thing he said. And there's a part where people in the background are like having sex, and he's like, that was in the script, but they filmed the movie in I think Serbia. And he said that he walked by and he's like, the smell was very real, and everyone is convinced that those two people were actually having sex in the movie.
That is hilarious.
So that's the stuff that like goes on in this movie, and it's great. I mean, I don't want to gush more about it. I give this one like a go see it as soon as you can. And how do you feel?
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I think if you're in the mood for a good, gory romp that's just fun and has some great actors in it, I think you should definitely go see this one.
Yeah, so this comes out on video on demand November 10th, which is stupid since that's after Halloween, but it doesn't really have any Halloween vibes to it, so I feel like if you watch it in November, you'll be fine. George, you want to introduce this one?
Okay, yeah. This is Never Hike Alone. It is a more kind of independent movie. It was released on Vimeo and YouTube. It's a fan-made Friday the 13th movie, and it runs about an hour long, like about 53 minutes, I think. And it's directed by Vincente DeSanti, and it stars Andrew Leahy and Vincent DeSanti, who's also the director.
You did really well with those names. I was just reading it on our note sheet, and I was like, fuck, this is like gonna be really hard for to read. It's spelled really weird, but yeah. So this movie was kickstarted. It was originally supposed to be 20 minutes long, and when they actually brought it to Kickstarter, they were mostly done with it, but they needed to finish some scenes that required like heavy makeup and visual effects, so they needed more money for that. And they did a really good job at raising money because they raised over like $19,000, I'm pretty sure. And what I thought was really cool about this back when they did the Kickstarter was they were only going to use the money they needed and then donate the rest of it to protect the forest that they filmed the fan film in.
That is really cool.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, dude. I like this movie more than most of the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, I think the reason why it came out so good is because it's obviously made by huge fans of the series, and they're able to just cut the fat out of all the movies where, there's not a half hour of, like in Friday the 13th 1, there's so many scenes of just like nothing going on. They play Monopoly, they make coffee, they do nothing. I mean, it's so much boring things that are like supposed to build tension, but really just come out as being like, why am I watching this right now? And this one kind of cuts a lot of that out and just really gets to the conflict and setting the scene for the inevitable confrontation with Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, and I think the reason it works is because it only has two characters, which are Jason and Kyle McLeod. I don't know. Like, okay, here's my gripe with it. You're going to make a movie, and this guy's last name, this character's last name is spelled McLeod. Like, you can pick any name in the world, and you pick this, like, gibber. Like, but anyways, so basically what's going on is he's like an adventure YouTuber. He's like Man vs. Wild, but he does it with GoPro, and he's going out in the woods to hike for a few days, I guess. And he has sponsorships and everything. And that part is actually pretty good. So that part's kind of set up as found footage, but this is not a found footage movie.
No, and I just want to say the actual character of Kyle is super likable. You kind of immediately believe him as if he's an outdoorsman, kind of vlogger, documentarian deal. And he's really likable as a character. And all the scenes that are found footage where it's like him talking to the camera are really believable. Like, I could probably find a YouTube video that's like 90% similar to the things that he shot.
Yeah, totally. Like, a lot of the stuff from behind the scenes, like when he's trying to do his sponsorship part but not sound like he's filming an ad, right? That kind of like hit home because I was like, oh, we do that every day at work. Like, they did a really good job with that, and I think this plays really well on YouTube. This movie, and the forest they filmed in, where they made this Camp Crystal Lake, is awesome. It looks really good.
Yeah, I thought that all the scenes of the camping and the landscape shots of the lake, and finding the old Camp Crystal Lake sign and the old campsite where all the murders happened, all that looked like movie quality. I believed that they could go to like the set of one of the older movies, and it would have looked almost identical to that.
Yeah, and they were pretty liberal with their use of Friday the 13th's name. Like, there's a Camp Crystal Lake sign, there's a Camp Crystal Lake logo in this, and they do a good job of putting a disclaimer that this is a fan film that they're not making any money on at the very beginning, which I think protects them. So I hope it stays up on YouTube, but it has 20,000 views right now, which for just a short film you're dumping on YouTube, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think it deserves more than that. I hope that they can get some notoriety for this and maybe get involved in making a legit addition to the series, like a real Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, seriously, if they're going to pick anyone to direct a reboot of Friday the 13th, Vincente DeSanti is your guy. He knows the character of Jason, and he even plays the character of Jason, which is awesome, and he does a really good job.
It's one of the best Jason faces I've seen in any of the movies. I think it's one of my favorites for sure, if not my favorite Jason face. It even pays homage to the Friday the 13th Part 3 when he gets the axe in his head. He has the big line down the one side of his face where the axe was lodged in there. I mean, you can tell that they really put a lot of time and effort into having really accurate, thoughtful homages to the older movies.
Yeah, and they don't show you the whole face. They just show you a little glimpse of it, but you see a big chunk, but just enough to freak you out. And I will say, this scared me. I have never been scared by a Friday the 13th movie in my life, but there's some parts in this, man, that actually made me jump. But there's also parts where you get that fear that like drives into your heart where you're like, oh, that's what I got in this movie sometimes. And I was like, shit, this is good.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really, there's some moments that are very, very tense where you're following Kyle around and you don't want him to die. I think in slasher movies in general, there's a lot of times where you root for the bad guy to kill everyone because you're like, well, all the characters in this movie suck. I prefer that they all die rather than the main killer. And in this one, it's the opposite, where you want to see Kyle make it to the end.
Yeah, totally. I really wanted him to make it to the end, dude. The entire time, he's acted really well. He's written really well. They just did a good job, and they did a good job with the camping aspect in the same way that Ruin Me did. It felt believable, so that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that having the packs of wild dogs outside the tents and him, reviewing the different tools that he's bringing and saying that like, oh, there's like a trail over here and it's unexplored. It's weird. It's not on my map. I better go check it out.
The Camp Crystal Lake looked really good. So yeah, this for free. You can find this for free on Vimeo or YouTube. All you got to do is search Never Hike Alone. And I think the people who made it are Womp Stomp Productions. If you do go watch it and you like it and you're going to share it, make sure you mention that we sent you, because I want to see if we can actually get people to see this thing, because 20,000 views is a lot, but I feel like this deserves a lot more than it has, and it's really fucking good.
Yeah, I think this is not only a great fan-made film, but probably in the top 3 Friday the 13th movies, and everyone should get a watch if you're a fan of the series.
Yeah, and even though Friday the 13th is a summer franchise, which I will take to my grave, this is a good Halloween thing to watch. There's some good fall shots in this one. Yeah,
really good setting, great Jason, great main character, a lot of tense moments. It's very well produced. The effects are great. It's shot on a high quality camera. I think there's no reason not to watch it, especially since it's free on YouTube.
Yep. So that's going to wrap up segment 2. So we did pretty good with that one, I think, on actually liking stuff, because we're both very self-conscious about shitting on everything. So, I mean, like, we were okay on found footage. We didn't love it. We love Mayhem, and we love Never Hike Alone. So if one of your biggest complaints with our show is that we're not positive on horror movies, we just proved that we like them. So we're going to take a quick break now, and then we will be right back for segment 3, which is on The Evil Within 2. Okay, we're back from our quick break, and now we're going to talk about The Evil Within 2, which just released on PS4, Xbox One, and PC on this past Friday the 13th. So if you've never heard of The Evil Within before, it was Shinji Mikami's great return to survival horror. It was produced by Bethesda. So after he left Capcom, after making Resident Evil 4 and kind of like not feeling too great about 5 and 6, he went over to Bethesda, started his new studio called Tango Gameworks, made a game that's decent, I would say, like not great, not amazing, just solid. And then John Johannes, who's the director of the 2 DLC packs for that game, ended up directing this one. And we mentioned last week that it's written by Trent Haga, who we are both big fans of.
Mm-hmm.
So we've actually both technically gotten to the same point. I've played the first area in my like official release game that I got from Bethesda, but I went to that press event a couple months back and I actually ended up playing the same part that George just reached. So how do you feel about the game so far?
I'm a big fan of it. I think that a lot of the changes that they made from the first one are kind of welcome additions, where it's definitely a more open world aspect to it, where you're basically plopped down in this little town that exists within the mind of one of the characters, and it's just very eerie. It sets you up for, it's a very creepy tone to be in this city, where it's just like a bunch of houses that some of them are explorable, some of them aren't, and they're just like these weird, like disgusting looking monsters everywhere. And you kind of just have to sneak around and collect gear for crafting bullets and upgrading your weapons. And it really does have some tense moments. I know I'm having a ton of times where I'm going into a new house or a new area and I'm thinking, man, I hope I have enough bullets for this because I only have like 2 clips for my handgun and I hope I'll be able to make it through this next area.
So you're hitting every point I like there about this game, and it is significantly better than the first one. So the basic plot setup here is that in this world, there's this company called Mobius, and they can like create this world in a brain, and the person whose brain is creating the world can inhabit this world as well. So it kind of, you know, in the first game, they go into this brain world, and that's how they can get away with making the game very scary, because they can literally put anything horrifying in front of your face and then justify it with someone had this nightmare, and then that's what you're seeing, this person's nightmare. So the first game's plot is insanely hard to follow. It's like super convoluted, but I will give IGN credit. They did a like Evil Within 1 in 5 minutes video that if you want to like skip the first game and play 2, you can just watch that. But the plot of this game is that the main character, Sebastian, it turns out that his daughter, his little daughter, who he thought was dead, is alive. So after being lied to by his, I guess, sidekick, Kidman, who is another detective who ended up working for Mobius, because this is a Japanese game and there's a ton of plot threads, she brings him back in to the dream world. And I gotta say, the biggest inspirations for this are like if you took Dead Rising 4 and mashed it up with Metal Gear Solid 5. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that kind of hits the nail on the head, where there's a lot of creatures everywhere, and but there's a lot of stealth elements also, where there's threats around every corner, but you can do most objectives in a stealth-based way and have to collect different loot for crafting and kind of really analyze every situation before you go into it. You can't really just run into an area guns blazing most of the time, because you probably don't have enough ammo to alert like 5 enemies and have them all run at you at once. You'll just get overwhelmed and you'll die.
Exactly. And so this game's set up a lot like Final Fantasy 15, where in the first few chapters you're in this little town of Union, and so far what we think is that it funnels you into a more linear path as the game, you know, reaches its middle/end. So the actual part of Union is cool, because you wouldn't think that third-person survival horror would mash well with... I just died again. Oh my god, I'm dying. You wouldn't think that survival horror would mash well with open world design, but they do just enough stuff to make it interesting to where you can't kind of like mindlessly play it. You have to be smart about everything, but they do a really good job of making it engaging and fun and having cool progression systems that actually have real benefits within the game.
Yeah, I think splitting up the upgrades into 2 different currencies was smart, because in the first game there was just the one brain goo, where the enemies would drop that and you'd use that to upgrade not only your weapons.
Was it called brain goo in the first game?
I think it's called green gel.
Yeah, it's called green gel in this one, but me and you have always called it brain goo. But that actually sounds like what I thought they called it. I don't think they did now that I'm saying it out loud, but like I thought they called it brain goo.
Well, the thing is, the symbol in the first game was like a little jar with a brain in it, so that's I think why we called it brain goo. But I think it's actually called green gel. And so you use the green gel now in this game to upgrade just your character as a whole. So you upgrade your sneak abilities and your health and your endurance and your combat skills. So like you can have less kickback with your weapons and there's less weapon sway. But then you use the weapon parts that you find scattered throughout the world to upgrade your actual abilities with those guns. Like pistols do 120% more damage now, and adding different upgrades to the weapons through those instead of having them both use the same currency. And I think that is smart, and it allows you to upgrade your character more consistently, which makes you feel like you're accomplishing more as you play.
Yeah, and then on top of the upgrades, it has a like gameplay progression system where the more you search around for better loot and the more you track side quests and stuff, the better you're going to be rewarded for it. One thing I really like is closer to the beginning, you can find a broken sniper rifle on a roof, and if you go through the effort of finding the piece to fix it, it totally pays off. Whereas in a lot of other games, like I guess Destiny would be an example, like the exotic gun quests, they feel like chores, but in this game it feels really cool. Like you have a clear path to get somewhere, and then at the end of that path you did a lot of work to get an item, and that item always feels like it was worth the trouble, which I really like.
Yeah, I think that the sniper quest is like a good way to show that, and I hope there's more parts later in the game that kind of show where you get something at one point and then you can use it later to get something better or to upgrade yourself in some way, because I think that's actually really interesting to be able to find a weapon in one area and then keep through exploration being able to reward you for that in some way. And they do really reward you in this one for exploration, because that's how you get your weapon parts, gunpowder, all your crafting tools, which you really need at all times to craft bullets and get yourself out of most sticky situations.
Right, and there's safe houses where you can craft at a safe house on a workbench, right? You can craft new bullets, you can like fix your guns and upgrade them, but you can also craft in the field, but it uses twice as many parts. So you've got to play this like risk reward system at all times, where you're like, oh, I only have this much gunpowder and I can make 5 bullets, but if I could sneak back to the safe house, I can make 10 bullets. And every bullet makes a difference in this game, so it's really cool that you can kind of like play the odds that way. It feels like gambling with your life, which is I know what they were going for, and it's extra punishing, but it pays off, I think, really well.
Yeah, I think the safe houses are a really cool addition to the game, because not only do they add a place where you can upgrade your guns and yourself, where you can go into Seb's like mind office, I guess, to upgrade your brain, and it allows you a place. This
isn't even wrong.
That's a part of the game.
Yeah, it sounds so dumb, but it's real.
But I think it's a good way to have a safe area for you to upgrade your character. And also, they have coffee pots now, where every time you find a safe house, there's a coffee pot in it, and if you drink the coffee, it upgrades completely fills your health bar, and it like recharges over time. So it's a good place to just kind of come back to every once in a while to upgrade yourself and get some health back, and kind of it's a good place to come back to like a touching point. Be like, okay, I did like 2 hours worth of collecting things. Time to go back and upgrade stuff, and then I can go back out and do some more exploration.
Yeah, and the coffee is not the only Twin Peaks reference in this game. Like the first chapter, it does have a very slow start, but that first chapter is very deliberate in what it shows you, and there are a ton of Twin Peaks references in this game, which I really liked.
Yeah, I think that basically the plot goes really fast for the first 3 chapters, where you're kind of like hitting like plot point, and then it opens up to chapter 4. Like I think I spent more time in chapter 4 than I did any other part of the game combined, because that was really the point where you get your first couple side quests and your first chance to really kind of see what Union's all about and get get your weapons, get a few more weapons you can use, and kind of your first place in the game where you're kind of off the leash and able to kind of explore the new mechanics.
Yeah, and then once you actually get to the boss fights, the boss design in this game, the first game had pretty good boss design, but this game takes it to another level. You fight this boss, I guess after you're in Union for a little while, you end up fighting this boss that's like an amalgamation of body parts. Like her legs are made of 5 or 6 legs, and then her arms are made of like 5 or 6 arms, and then she's just like this mass in the middle, like a big tumor made of heads. And that part was really cool. I really liked that boss battle.
Yeah, I think the boss fights are definitely a major positive for the game, a major place where they shine, because really I've only fought like 2 bosses so far, and the one that you're talking about is actually a really cool fight where you're kind of locked down in this front of a municipal building, and you're basically like, well, I have this many bullets and there's these crates everywhere and I'm being chased by this thing, and you can use the environment to interact with the boss in cool ways. Like there's a big gas truck that fell over and it's just pouring gas on the ground, and if you shoot it, then you can light her on fire, and then she'll kind of stomp around and smash some boxes which have ammo, and then you can go get the ammo, and then you can start laying a couple rounds into her. And there's
dude, she hates boxes so much.
She hates boxes.
Dude, so there's like a part, if you're running, if she's chasing you, right, which she chases you around the little arena, if you run past a box, she will stop chasing you to break the box for you, which is just like hilarious. I don't know why that made me laugh so hard, but I was like, damn, she fucking hates these boxes.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird, like you're running and it's very tense, and then you turn around and you just see her like just stomping the shit out of this box, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. So and then the best thing is when she stops it, and then when she's done, her whole body turns, she's like, ding, like an anime. She like looks at you and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta go. Oh, and then so you know that part, there's a part in Resident Evil 7, if you haven't played it, sorry, that game came out in January, this is on you. There's a part where you have to look down a hole at a lantern, and then a hand creeps out of a hole, grabs the lantern and pulls it back, and it's probably the scariest thing I've seen in 10 years in general. And they have a call out to that in this game, where at the very, very, very beginning of the game, there's a part where you see this lady kill a guy, and then you go in the basement, get some loot, find the first safe house. But then when you're leaving the safe house, the guy's body is like in the foyer of the house, and then you see a hand grab it and then drag it away. And you're like, oh shit. That's crazy.
Yeah, I do think the one aspect of the game that might be weaker in this one than it was in the first one was I haven't seen a lot of things that are really put me on edge and make me scared. Like I think for the whole first game, every time you're in a new area, it's scary because you never know how the world is going to like shift in some way and make it like really tough for you. I have had a few moments like that where, you know, like in the first game, there'd be parts where you'd walk through a door and then you'd hear someone talking and be like, well, like, oh, this is like pretty creepy. Maybe I'll turn around. And you turn around, the hallway is like now a wall and there's no door there. And then you walk forward and the hallway expands to be like 100 miles long. And like all this like blood starts pouring from the ceiling and stuff. And I've seen definitely much less of that in this game so far. I don't know if when it becomes more linear, we'll see more of that. But I think that's kind of lacking so far, and I really thought that was a strong point of the first game.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments in this one. You have to kind of initiate the scary moments, which I think is, like, as you just said, worse than the first game. But one thing so if you ever see like an opportunity to hit A and stare at something, do it, but be ready for a really scary moment. Because I found one where you walk in front of this mirror, and then you see him in his outfit from the first game, and then he's like, obviously in a different outfit because it's a different game, and he's like, that's me from before. And then this ghost lady slams the window and is like, ah, and it scared me so bad. And then she like punches through and he's like, fuck. So that's like one jump scare.
One thing I really like about the dialogue in this game is Seb basically says exactly what you're thinking
Yes.
a lot of times.
Yes.
When you get into an encounter and you see like a new enemy type or something, and it's just like super like, oh, like you say to yourself like, shit, I don't want to do this, and then Seb will be like, shit.
Like, it's like there's a part where he drops his gun, and you can tell because he's a detective. There's no reason a detective should ever like let go of his gun, and his gun flies across the room, and he like sees it like 10 feet away from him, and then he like looks back at the zombie, and he's like, fuck. Like, like he says it like that, like where he's like, I just screwed up so bad. And it's like, it's awesome. And I think that's a lot of that made it into Dead Girl, which the writer Trent Haga also wrote Dead Girl. That kind of just meta, exactly what you're thinking humor is definitely in this game because of him. And I'm so glad they hired him to write it just because of that.
Right. I think that's definitely a really strong point. The plot also is more, I guess, like understandable this time around, because the first game you really don't know what's going on at all until like the last two chapters, and the plot kind of comes together. This one at least has a central arc to follow right from the get-go, where there's one bad guy and you're there to save your daughter, and you kind of understand exactly why you're there. And in the first game, that was kind of more muddy until near the end of the game.
The pacing is so bad in the first game. It's just it's a collection of levels rather than a coherent story. But this game is very deliberate about telling a story, which they took the criticisms to heart, so you can't really blame them for that.
Yeah, and I think all the other updates they made were all big quality of life upgrades that needed to be made to really make this one stand out so much. And I think this one's getting a lot of praise because it's such a huge improvement over the first game in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, and then the sound design is great. The pistol, it has the best like punch of any video game pistol ever. Like, it's a pistol, which is usually the weakest, and yeah, it is the weakest gun in the game, but like every time you hear that thing fire, it sounds like you feel powerful. And then when it hits the bad guys, you can see the like burning hole where it hit them, like it smolders for a minute. And like just the little details that went into this game are so much better, because the first game really struggled to even hit 25 frames per second on like the beefiest PCs and PS4. And this game, from everything I played on PC, has run flawlessly. Like, I'm running it in 1440p, 30 frames per second locked at ultra settings on a 1070 and an i5, and it chugs a little bit between levels, like whenever there's gonna like be a cutscene that plays. But other than that, it's pretty freaking smooth, especially compared to the first one.
Yeah, I'm playing it on my PS4 Pro, and I've really only noticed like maybe one or two instances of slowdown, but it's been pretty much a butter smooth experience for me.
Yeah, I heard. So there at launch on PS4, there are no PS4 Pro benefits, but there are going to be some later on towards when the Xbox One X is launching, because they're going to get the same kind of patch that comes out at the same time. But I don't think it'll really add anything. On regular PS4s, apparently it runs really well, like 30 frames, 1080p, very solid, but there are some dips. But on PS4 Pro, it does run a little bit better, but it's still 1080p, 30 frames per second, which, I mean, that's fine. That's significantly better than the first game, which ran at 25.
Right.
And there's no more film grain. There's no more black bars obscuring like 60% of the screen, and the camera is punched in a lot in Sebastian, which there are a few moments where you're in a very cramped area and there's 4 bad guys and you're like, I'm gonna fucking die because I can't see 2 out of 4 of the guys that are trying to kill me right now. But other than that, it's a lot better just quality of life stuff happening here.
Yeah, I think that the really up close combat it struggles with, but I think all the things they added really outweigh any of the negatives.
Right, and then so the close-up stuff doesn't really work a lot of the time at the beginning, but I upgraded some things with my stealth part and then just, the combat portion of upgrading Sebastian, and I did actually see the benefit, which I feel like is very rare in upgradable games. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I do like the upgrade system. I think stealth is much, much improved over the first game. You are actually able to sneak up on enemies and be able to take them out and kind of sneak through areas way easier and a lot of times you do have to do that. There are some enemies that won't die in a single hit from a stealth attack, but most of the basic enemies do die instantly. So if you can get in like 2 or 3 stealth kills before an encounter, you can make your life way, way easier.
Yeah, and the first time I encountered one of those was horrifying. I was like, wait, I just stabbed you in the back of the head. And then they turn around and they're like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And you're like, yeah you are. I'm going to run. So, I mean, neither of us have beaten the game yet, but I give this an unequivocal buy just because I put a ton of time into it already. And even if I didn't beat it, I would be very positive on the time I've spent with it as of now.
Yeah, I love everything that I've played so far. I think I'm about like 6.5 hours in, and I've just had a blast with the game. I've liked pretty much everything about it.
Yeah, and you know, we chastise people for like telling you to go buy Cult of Chucky if you didn't want to see it. But that's a bad movie. This is a really good game that most people are agreeing is good. And if you want more survival horror experiences like this, you should go buy this game. It's kind of different than Cult of Chucky because if you bought Cult of Chucky, you'd get more Chucky movies. But if you buy this game, you'll get more survival horror games as a whole because if AAA survival horror games do well, we just get more survival horror games from AAA publishers, which is what we need. Like, we don't need any more PT clones. We need more advancement in the third person, survival horror genre because Resident Evil, they've got first person nailed. I hope they stick with it going forward. Tango Gameworks knows what they're doing with the third person Resident Evil 4 style game. They can handle it. So if you want more survival horror that's AAA, go out and buy this game. It is amazing, and it needs to be played by a lot of horror fans, I think.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
All right, so we went a little over an hour this time, but I know for a fact I said that we would never go out over an hour and a half, and we are at an hour and 17, so we kept to our word, George.
Yeah, we're not liars yet.
So, as always, the biggest thing you can do to help us out is be like Jeremy, Papa Drew Bear, and Luke and rate the show on iTunes. It doesn't matter what star rating you give it. It's just it helps us out with getting noticed by the iTunes algorithm if you hit any star or at least like leave a review. And again, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on any podcast service you can think of. And now we're on YouTube at youtube.com/JimmyChampagne. So if you have any other services you want this on, just let us know. It shouldn't be too hard to get it up there. But you can follow me at Jimmy Champagne. Where can we find you, George?
You can follow me on Twitter at George Fazard.
And then you can follow our show at Fear Frequency on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook because we got very lucky with the name. So I'm going to close us out this week because George did it last week. This has been episode 3 of Fear Frequency. Thank you so much for listening, and you never know who also might be listening.